playing. I'm gonna see if I can play it. This is a really hard lick, actually. Life in the fast lane. Life in the fast lane. In the fast lane. That's a really hard lick.
Yeah.
I should. Yeah, I need to practice more.
Can we safely say that the Eagles basically owned the 70s?
Oh, legendary, man.
Yeah.
They were insane.
I just want to ruffle feathers. I'm sure lots of people are like, what? What about Led Zeppelin? What about... Yeah.
No, the Eagles.
That the Eagles just dominated.
Yeah.
And you could make the case that they recorded the number 1 song in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Hotel California.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think, this might be sacrilege to say this, but there are a lot of parts in Stairway to Heaven it's just like, okay, that's like Jimi Hendrix version of All Along the Watchtower. The part that goes dun 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 dun. That's right. The same chord progression and kind of groove as da 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 da. I mean, it's just a play on that, but when you can solo to the same feel over those two solo sections, All Along the Watchtower, Jimi Hendrix version, and that's the greatest part, right? That's where that famous. I mean, it's an incredible solo that Jimmy Page does, but
for sure, for shizzle.
I don't know. I mean, Jimi Hendrix pretty much killed it with All Along the Watchtower, even though that's not his song, right? I mean, it's a Bob Dylan song, but
right, it's a Bob Dylan song. I'm right there with the Eagles in the 70s, and two of the biggest selling albums of all time are Hotel California and Eagles' Greatest Hits. I think Eagles' Greatest Hits is now the #1 selling album of all time.
Really? I didn't know that.
I mean, go look it up. I've heard different things. There was always, is it Thriller or is it Eagles' Greatest Hits?
Yeah.
I think Eagles' Greatest Hits has sold more than Thriller, maybe now. I don't know.
Really?
I just remember reading some, Rolling Stone magazine discussion or whatever about that. Yeah. And then Hotel California is like right behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think I may have said this on a previous episode, but if I hadn't, I highly recommend you. I don't know if it was on Netflix. Watch the David Geffen documentary about music. It takes him all the way through his career, starting lying to get a job, almost kind of like working in the mailroom type of thing.
Yeah,
and then just his force of will. I didn't realize he was as powerful as he was. By the time he and Spielberg, and Katz would get together, you always assume, well, Spielberg's the guy for SKG, but actually David Geffen was the most powerful person in LA. And all the music, all the bands he had signed, all this stuff like that, all the things he made happen through sheer force of will.
Yeah.
But he talks about the Eagles. It talks about it's really cool. If you like music and you like the history of music, watch this David Geffen thing. Yeah. It is mind-blowing.
Yeah, wow.
And how an agent or a producer, someone like him, a behind-the-scenes person, really did move the needle and make the careers of a lot of talented people who otherwise no one ever would have known about them.
Force of will, man.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about force of will, seriously. I mean...
Well, so I have no idea what you guys are talking. No. I don't mean this. I don't mean this as a negative commentary. But to me,
we're not taking it as such. So
it is interesting that I can go and watch something to understand someone who was a catalyst many years ago to things that people won't even think about. Like, that's actually like super interesting to me.
Yeah.
You're talking about music and movies, and Netflix has a super cool series called The Movies That Made Us, which is it's about the movies of the 90s and what it actually took to make the movies.
Yeah.
And obviously, music is a huge part of it. And I didn't know, because I'm not in the movie business, but how intricate it is to score a movie. They talk about Phil Spector. And when I heard the name, I'm like, oh, wait, what didn't guy murder people? Anyway, but, it's like there was a time, like you're talking about CGI, like I didn't realize before Jurassic Park, we've never really seen computer animation. Like that was it. And it talks, and we talk about this in IoT, when we're like, when we went from packet data to IP, and it's like, hey, stop animation, CGI. Anyway, just it blew me away. So what I'm trying to say is we should all learn the history of the things that surround us so that we can understand and speak intelligently about whatever.
You're right.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Think about that. You're right. Before all that, it was all practical effects. Spaceships were plastic models, all that beforehand, right? Interesting tie-in for me. So does anyone remember a company called Silicon Graphics? They were a big deal, obviously, before Sun Microsystems.
You mean a company called? Oh, okay. I thought you said comedy called Silicon Graphics.
No, the company.
Silicon Valley. It's a great show on the HBO.
But the company,
Silicon Graphics. Yeah, of course, yeah.
One of the most legendary Silicon Valley companies. In fact, Google's headquarters is the old Silicon Graphics headquarters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right there by the amphitheater. Yeah. And so, and I remember visiting with the cool tie-in, because you're right, Silicon Graphics was so far ahead of everybody else in the workstations they were building and the technology. And so they're the ones responsible for all the stuff you saw in Jurassic Park. So what was cool tie-in for me, being a submarine guy, is up at the Trident base, up across the bay from Seattle, Bangor, they have this thing called Trident Training Facility. And so basically, you go into this giant building, and they have this floating hydraulic deck that simulates, it looks just like the control room on a submarine. And you all sit in your stations and everything. And there's somebody behind a glass window with all these computerized control systems. And it simulates you being at sea and going to battle and launching torpedoes and all this stuff. All that tech was built by Silicon Graphics. And I remember the first time because on a Trident boat, a Ohio class boat, you have two crews. One crew, you always, kind of like load balancing. You always need someone out at sea to cover target packages. And so when you're the crew that's home for a few months while the other crew's out, you'll go keep your skills up. And so you would go into this Trident training facility. And so it's officer of the deck, the people who are driving, diving officer, people doing the water, and it fully simulated with high fidelity tech.
Wow.
What it was really like. And I just remember learning, they're like, Silicon Graphics, those guys that made Jurassic Park, they made this thing. And I'm like, this is amazing. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well,
fun stuff.
There's your Metaverse 1.0.
Yes. And apparently I was on
I had to throw it in there.
No, you're right.
Oh my God.
You're right.
Apparently, we need to get the SEO like little, that's like the most popular tag right now. And,
it was like the Metaverse. Yeah. Apparently, I was on TV. They had. Do you remember what is the PBS show Nova?
Yeah.
Nova, and they had a series called Next Step or whatever. Their filmers came in there and filmed us. I have never seen the show myself, but a friend of mine out of nowhere said, "Dude, I just saw you on Nova or whatever," and I was driving the submarine, the fake submarine, the digital one submarine in the Metaverse or whatever. So I was like, there you go. So,
simulators, fighter simulators, they've been around for ages,
Yeah.
I mean, it's sometimes, I don't know. I think to your point, David, it's important to know how all these things have really kind of evolved over time, this whole idea of like VR, AR, blah, blah, blah. Everyone thinks it's new. I mean, military has been using a lot of this technology for a long time, and while there's this whole narrative that now the government and the military use commercial technologies to drive the most advanced stuff. It's like, well, no, actually it kind of happened the opposite way. You had a lot of military R&D that created the foundational technologies that got commercialized, and there is a bit of a feedback loop, but there's the other thing. A lot of government spending, it goes to private companies that are contractors that the government grants tons of money to help develop a lot of this tech. But it's amazing what especially the military has done with a lot of the technologies that we think are so whiz-bang and crazy, and basically dominating the headlines today. A lot of this stuff, the markets for these things like AR, VR have struggled for a long time, and I don't think there's a lot of folks out there that really understand what those barriers and challenges to market adoption and maturity have been over the years. They just continually say, "Oh, hey, this is the year. This is the year." Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's next year, And anyway.
Yeah, but I think it's also, look, here's the thing, like putting the technology aside, I think all of us have experienced, like great VR, super cool experiences, like, whoa, right? Like, but we also understand, that there's probably like a room full of racks 10 feet away, right? I am, plugged into like, dark, like optimal environment to deliver that optimal user experience, right? Oh, yeah. And you take that and, we put the technology aside, but it's also, the timing on the would-be buyer, because everyone's trying to sell something to someone else. Yeah. And look, I think even pre-pandemic, it's like even the large enterprises, like attention is fickle. I might pay attention to VR. Oh yeah, this can totally solve it. And it's like, wait, I have another. You know what? Never mind. And it's not making excuses for crap technology, of which there are tons. But the timing just hasn't seemed to cut up to VR, AR outside of niche examples where the tech is working. Well, there's just not going to be any PR about it. Right. Like it's being used, but there's no campaign, there's no SEO. It's like, hey, I'm a VR company, I'm doing great, I've got customers, we've got a great product. I don't need to market. It's a word of mouth strategy sort of thing, and it's working. There's that.
Yeah, that. Yeah, VR. A lot of people don't realize. Yeah, thanks, Beavis. If you go back to the dawn of time in the 90s, when everything started kind of really taking off, because we had the internet came out of DARPA, and then Tim Berners-Lee gave us the web and HTML. There was something called VRML that was out in the 90s, where you could do virtual reality in the web browser, and people tried to do it, but you're right, it didn't go anywhere, at the time. Just like AI didn't go anywhere for a long time.
I like how drones haven't really gone anywhere. That was like supposed to be the huge 5G application. Well, see, here's the thing, man. Technology, and I've been getting into a lot of these conversations. It's funny. You have these people who bash like the technology. It's like, why are you bashing the technology? Technology never hurt you or, called you a name or did anything bad. They're bad applications. Yeah. Applications that are just stupid. Is you take a technology and then you apply it in a really, kind of nonsensical way, and it's not the technology that reaches the market, it's the application. And I think there's a ton of people who forget it. And I will tell you, the only reason why I say this is I get into so many conversations where people, they don't know the difference between technology and applied technology or the application. It is very different. Yeah, and somehow these two things have gotten squished together, and then people just have like they talk in circles and just have the most nonsensical discussions. They're totally non-constructive, because that's how you get into those techno religious wars, and discussion. Oh, this technology is better than that. It's like, well, you're really talking about an application, or if you're talking about technology, it's like, who cares?
You know, if we had a synth band, we would probably come out with an album called Techno Religion.
I think so. Dude, that is an awesome name for a band.
What would be the album?
Techno Religion.
Would it be like a motherboard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
Maybe. Or
Right.
we would have Sigfox and MBiot on one side and the other. Yeah, that's what.
You can see, like, I love the motherboard thing, and you're like, and you have some infant on the cover, like, mommy, and there's a motherboard.
Wow, man. Yeah, that's clever. That is clever. Yeah,
we have to stick Mark in there somewhere.
Yeah, we would use the same baby.
Kumbaya.
Nevermind album cover.
Yeah, there you go. But then we get sued.
They get sued.
Yeah, later on for emotional abuse.
Yeah.
But it will get dismissed in court. Don't you worry.
That's right. It's like, get that out of there.
Yeah, there's already a precedent for it. Yeah. So, hey guys, so what the news was it last week? It was last week, right? So, what happened to Sigfox?
Ooh. I mean, so what's out there? So they went into receivership, which is that's the term in Europe. For us, is close to a Chapter 11. So run out of cash, run out of runway, and personally, I think it hurts because Leonard, we were just talking about the technology and the application. To the non-tech people, this was another connectivity platform, right? I have all these connectivity options, and low power, wide area with Sigfox was one of them, right? No arguing that. And whether we like it or not, it drove the cost of other network technologies down because, if you were in a geography where Sigfox was available, you couldn't be charging where you were charging last week. So, it's upsetting that there's less competition in the market, but it's also interesting that, and we're not going to find out for years, but what will happen to the folks that deployed something and got used to that cost structure of the connectivity? I'm going first layer. Will they ever look at anything else? Because it worked. I mean, it's still going to work. We don't know what's going to happen to to the infrastructure. Yeah. But it will be really tough for someone to come in with a different technology and try to offer connectivity at anything above what these folks are still doing, because they do have a market. So it'll be interesting times when it comes to connectivity pricing, no matter what happens to
it's so interesting. I mean, so both those two great, below 1 gigahertz, playing the game with EU rules and then other countries' rules to send little chirps. You can send so many per day, and it can only be this big. But if you play ball with this, you can do it, and they'll let you do it. And then it turned out to be ultra low power, because it was so little data and stuff like that. And so the two great technologies that came out of that, they both came from France. And so Sigfox, but then the same technology that's in LoRa also came from France. But we saw two paths, take shape. Semtech, got the guy who created it and paid for the patent and whatever the technology, so that they can completely own the LoRa technology. And it's similar but slightly different than what Sigfox had. But then the business models were different. Sigfox decided, I'm going to use this technology and I'm going to be a mobile operator and build my own network. And I remember the founder at Mobile World Congress a million years ago when they raised like 100 million euros, and they were on fire, and this is going to be the next big thing. And as they swept across Europe and they were just going gangbusters, they tried to sweep across the United States and they kind of stalled out, and it didn't work for whatever reason. I don't know why they didn't have a good adoption. One of our friends, Alan Prothus, he used to be the head of Sigfox for America. Whereas Semtech, on the other side, was already an existing company making all kinds of things. And Semtech decided, well, we're not going to build a network. We're going to sell you, we own the technology completely, and we will sell hardware and gear to you, and you can roll your own, build your own private, because LoRa could just be kind of like when I talk about those agriculture things, I'm just going to use a bunch of LoRa devices talking to your LoRa base station, and it ends right there.
Yeah.
And then they developed the LoRa WAN specification to kind of try to route things around. And then that gave rise to, so Semtech said, we're not going to be the network, but if you want to use our gear to build your own. And so we saw the rise, the first guys were obviously Wiki and everything, the Things Network, kind of the power to the people. Hey, this is cheap. Put base stations on your rooftops in Amsterdam. Let's make a free network. And then at Senate, you've got obviously Helium's using it today. And so a lot of people are repurposing Semtech's technology to do that. Yeah. In the background, though, the owner of the tech, Semtech, they did not get themselves messed up in that world. And they're just sitting back making money selling the gear, which might be the best business model of them all. I don't know.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
That's really ironic. Hardware is where
Semtech is empowering other people to do whatever great thing they want to do. But they're the only ones making money on the deal, potentially.
Semtech is the original GPU.
Yeah. And so, I'm sure folks, their friends at Semtech, they probably debated, should we do this, our own network or not? But, watching what happened with Sigfox and watching what happened with some of these other players using LoRa, might be a cautionary tale for them. Also, the pricing thing is different, too. When you think about, will people ever go back, because you're right, Sigfox set a price. All the people who've made networks using LoRa have set prices. I think the Things Network is free. Helium is doing their thing, and Senate and others are paid, whatever. But there's still just the basic LoRa. I could just buy the gear myself and build my own network, and then it's free. Just like I can buy a Wi-Fi router for my house.
Yeah.
And once I've paid the capital costs, I now have connectivity throughout my house. So a lot of people, there's that. I just pay the CapEx and then that's it forever, so it's all over the map. And that's what NB-IoT and LTE-M have to compete against because, like your company, Verizon and other operators, they want to make money off that stuff. Yeah. But you're right. You're having to look over your shoulder and go, well, gosh, is this a competitive pricing model or not,
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, it's like, it's biased comment, but informed, I think. But I can tell you that not only at Big Red, but a value prop, if you would, from cellular-based LTM was always longevity. Like, hey, we have this infrastructure and we're doing these other things. And by the way, LTE launched in 2010. This is new, right?
Yeah.
When we launched LTE, we still had 2G somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it would be really interesting to, the decisions were made based on connectivity cost check. And now, this thing is going away, right? Do I swing back the other way and understand and not focus about the cost? Because, and it got close. There's, some, depending on what you're talking about, there's quite a bit of cost parity between your bare bones, LTM, couple of chirps a month sort of thing, and, and a LoRa Sigfox thing. So we'll see. I know there's a couple of friends right now that are probably going, ha, 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 ha. That's the last laugh there, pal. But not in public. Never laugh in front of customers. But anyway, it's, here it is, the longevity played out. Cellular based never really had the security concerns, from the other guys, especially around, that on-SIM, on-device authentication. So I don't know, let's see what happens. And maybe some junior analyst at a big firm will announce a $250 billion trillion estimate for LTM IoT, by the end of the year.
I'm a fan of LTEM.
Yeah, and
because I'm a developer and I'm always thinking, what's that path of least resistance? And if I need to do some kind of narrowband thing, energy efficient, but I also need to do something that developers already understand and know how to do. We got millions of developers that know how to build apps for smartphones and servers, and it's all based on IP. They don't even think about it. And the only way to get that to work in that narrowband area is with LTEM. Because otherwise, if you're doing NB-IoT or LoRa, it's some bizarro, totally different thing that doesn't look familiar to anyone. You have to learn that. And not everybody wants to learn it. I'm always a big fan of, familiarity of the technology a lot of times can win the day, even if a different technology is better.
Dude, and now that we've been in
VHS beta.
Supply chain crunch, you talk about availability as a developer, because here's the thing, and I use the US as an example. If you're developing your IoT widget, the reality is pick a carrier, whether you go down from a system on chip all the way to a fully finished gateway router. There are hundreds, if not thousands of SKUs today that you as a developer could use to get something going. Might not be might not be the final product, but today, and that's been because, standards and IP based and, certification is following. I mean, honestly, the same, 3GPP, GSMA standards. So that's something that was, the other narrowband IoT players were just couldn't compete about the breadth of the ecosystem. Anyway, because we've been putting things on a cellular network for a couple of decades now.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the network is already there. I mean, getting, the question of how do we get nationwide coverage is, for the most part, solved. Not completely, obviously. But you don't face the same kind of challenges that Sigfox and emerging LP low powered connectivity technologies have or networks have.
Leonard, if there's someone out there that gets to a point of the one reason why they're not going to do something IoT-ish is because of the connectivity cost, like that's your deal breaker. I'm sorry, pal. You never had a business case in the first place.
Yeah,
just shut up. Just go away. It's not a pricing thing. Your business case was freaking broken. Go back to school.
Right.
Redo it.
But pricing is an economic viability case. And that's, to me, what should really be a shocker for the IoT community is, Sigfox, for whatever pricing they provided out there, whatever kind of business model they based their business on, and the revenue model was not sustainable. They went, they're bankrupt, and that goes back to the stuff that we talked about last week. It's how, helium network, that's fine. How are you going to bring in the revenue to basically hydrate that economy? And how valuable is this thing at the end of the day? Because actually the partnerships that helium has drawn, the revenues we're talking about, if we're just talking about the roaming, the percentage of roaming business from these partners, it's tiny. It's not big dollars. We're talking maybe a few $1 million, and so it goes back to what you're saying. It's if you don't have a business case for all the business applications that are going to use the connectivity, and you can't price this thing appropriately, then there's this huge disconnect. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that, to me, is what's really disturbing about Sigfox, and maybe this is a wake-up call for everybody in the industry, because if you really think about IoT and this whole, and somehow it's become all about low-powered devices and long-range connectivity. Like what Rick calls like sort of the, what do you call it, remote. I forgot the term he uses, but it's not the industrial stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? It's more of the remote, constrained environment type IoT. Maybe that was just way overblown, and the numbers in terms of how the devices and the assumptions around the applications that were going to drive the demand that would allow the industry to hit these huge numbers in these IoT forecasts were just really off. And so the assumptions were totally, wrong. It's obvious. Do you know what I'm saying?
Marketing departments.
Obvious.
Marketing departments, as we evolved, especially as we're heading to 5G, using 4G technologies like NB-IoT and LTE-M, Cat-M1, they did come up with marketing terms for that stuff. Like they called that massive IoT, with the idea of just billions of tiny, low power, just sending a little. Yeah. And the use case was always power meters, right? Meter readers on that, which we've been doing that for decades with mesh networks and all kinds of stuff.
Power line carrier. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. And so that was the same space that Laura and Sigfox are also going after. I'm always a defender or whatever of startups. I don't wish anybody any ill will. I always want them. The idea is a good idea. You want it to work out. Pricing does matter. The business model notwithstanding. It's funny when we talk about it, the Sigfox or Laura stuff is not necessarily stuff you'd see in the factory. It's stuff when you see, and yet our good friend at the Things Industries is pushing Laura in factories. And I'm curious about that.
That's
because I'm so accustomed to it. And, it's not one size fits all, but a lot of industrial factory things, lots of data, video, just big stuff that you could never use that technology for. You need serious bandwidth, because you're just sending tons of stuff,
Yeah.
I'm building aircrafts, and my giant lathe that I'm using to make this other giant thing is just spitting out terabytes of data per hour. And so clearly Laura and Sigfox and LTE-M and all that, those are not candidates for that technology at all.
Yeah.
And I'm also, speaking of marketing, I'm expecting maybe marketing departments from, I don't know, Big Red and AT&T and other players who are still standing, potentially looking at the Sigfox demise. And I'm expecting to see websites and all kinds of stuff say, hey, come on over now that your thing you bet on is out of business. And I'm talking about end customers who bet on Sigfox and made big deployments. They're probably thinking, where am I going to go? And I feel bad for people who, that's always the tough thing, is when we're always dependent. There's always dependencies. You're always making dependencies on some other entity that you can't control. And then when that entity dies and you have sold something, or you've got a service you're providing to customers, maybe you put the software together in the devices and you said, I'm using Sigfox and the price was right. And now you've got something awesome. And now those customers are going to get cut off, but who are they going to come talk to? They're going to come talk to the person who built the solution, the SI, the whoever.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, oh, crap. And so I got to believe a lot of people are scrambling right now to, they're thinking, how do I move off of Sigfox? And the huge effort and expense, because you don't just say, oh, I'm just going to flip a switch on my device, a little jumper, and now it's going to do LoRa, or now it's going to do NB-IoT. No, it's not that way at all. Those devices a lot of times were purpose-built with Sigfox radios. And so they may have to swap out the entire device. We're talking huge money. This is going to have a big ripple effect. And so I'm sure a lot of those people, I assume it's still running now, Sigfox. And I think they're hoping that a buyer will show up, and that the networks will stay running, maybe.
Yeah, per French law, there's basically, they have these 6 months where things are going to work business as usual, and their aim is to find a buyer. And I believe that if 6 months go by and there is no buyer, at some point there will have to be liquidation. To be able to pay back, whoever, they owe money to. But, I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know. Let's see what the silver lining is. Also, Rob, I would hope that those that have deployed on this tech X years ago, if and when we get to a decommission conversation, right? If and when that they saw a return on investment based on whatever they deployed. So it is seen as the cost of going to the next technology and not necessarily sunk cost. It all went to crap and this sucked. So that's me, wishfully thinking.
Mr. Optimism.
Yeah, well, I mean, back to business case, right? You don't do anything without a projected ROI. So if your ROI was 2 years and you're in year 3, do it. You're okay. Don't be too upset. Work with the same partners. Whether that was an SI or whoever your distributor was, and how do we do this with over another technology and take advantage, and what are the things that we couldn't do that makes sense to do based on experience,
right?
What are the things where we're going to do cool things like get our friend Luke, who never shows up on this podcast, and do some like LTE to satellite, because you do need some use cases where you need visibility everywhere, even in the jungle. So anyway, that's just me being a positive Nancy.
Thank you, positive Nancy.
At your service.
Awesomeness. Wow.
Yeah. You guys know, I mean, so during these 6 months, I mean, isn't part of that whole receivership process to restructure? Or is it, so I don't know.
Their aim is to find a buyer so that the company
finding a buyer, not
so that the company continues to exist. And a big one, and that employment is not lost.
Right.
Further employment.
They'll probably have to restructure whoever the buyer is or whatever. I mean, they'll have to revisit the whole thing, right? I assume. I'm just thinking out loud.
I remember Sigfox being such a big deal. So, like, if I think back to my early days when I was on the Azure IoT team, I'm going to say, I don't know, 2014, 2015, whatever it was. I remember it was so important to us to make sure we did some kind of deal with Sigfox, because there was a lot of hype around them back then. And we were like, this is going to be a big thing. And so I remember we had the Sigfox leadership team executives fly out to Redmond, and they were there. I don't know if it was a whole week, but I remember just round all day meetings going on forever of how we're going to integrate Sigfox into Azure IoT Hub. Because ultimately the way Sigfox worked is they had their own cloud and all the data went to their place. And then if you wanted to get it, there were APIs to suck your data out of their deal. It wasn't going to your home. And so we spent all this time in engineering to build an interface to make it seamless for Sigfox devices to get stuff into Azure IoT Hub. Not unlike back then, also, another big player back then, related but not the same, was Jasper. I remember us feeling like, wow, Jasper is a big deal. Yeah. We need to, and I remember we spent a lot of time in those early days trying to integrate Jasper into our dashboards for IoT Hub in the Azure, cloud, because that seemed like, it's funny how different moments in time, you're like, oh my God, this is the new thing, or this is hot, and so as far as, Jasper was like the biggest name, as far as SIMs for IoT at that time frame.
Jasper, or the MVNO of the week at that point. It's funny. Wow, you're saying, that's when some of the early efforts for smaller players to find a way to localize a SIM as quickly as possible in another, those were the early days, man.
Yeah,
because back then you were just talking about roaming aggregation in a bill like that. There was no tech. This was a financial statement manipulation, not in a bad way, but that's what it was. And look where we are now. If we think what Nick at iSci is doing, it's wow. Yeah.
No, I mean, like my buddies over here in Seattle and Bellevue at Teal, they're doing some advanced stuff. They think of themselves as doing credentialing as a service, like with their eSIM stuff, so that you are not roaming, that you're native on that network. And of course, trying to convey to a customer what that actually means could be a challenge. What's different from being like that versus I'm just roaming all the time, and you have to explain to them the difference.
Yes.
But yeah, it's the thing.
And customers should be asking the tough questions. Like, if you're selling me credentialing, explain to me exactly how I get re-authenticated when I go to somebody else's network. Show it to me.
Sure.
That's not easy.
No, you're right. You're right. And when we think, it's funny because, we're kind of following a thread of people buying Semtech gear to build their own networks and have their own business models and all this stuff. And we know all those players. You could almost say, maybe, with NB-IoT and LTE-M, while I can go directly to Big Red or the other players, we also have this constellation of these companies like Soracom and Teal and SI and Once and Hologram and all them that are kind of trying to do their own thing and be pioneers.
Yeah.
They all have things that are similar about them all, but they're all trying to do global SIM, low cost, per megabyte or gigabyte or whatever that happens to be. And then you're right, some are just kind of roaming and some are doing something a lot more advanced, like our other friends are doing. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because they're, why would they strike out on their own to do this thing when, you should just call up Verizon, And so, what's the answer? Why would you do that?
I think it's
well, I mean, there's a need for it, and they're serving as brokers, and they're basically network middleware companies, right? You basically go through them, and then you can basically they handle all the back end processes and junk to get you that global SIM capability and global coverage. I mean, so
it's like your stuff at Verizon, ThingSpace, yeah. If I bought a SIM from there, is it just for the United States? Is it global?
No, it's legit global. You do have to read the fine print. Because again, there's things we cannot change. Like if you're going to go to Brazil, 89 days is got to go up. But that's not a Verizon thing. That's a regulator down there.
Yeah.
In Kazakhstan, cannot help you. Congo, sorry. Cuba, Mojito's great. Roaming, no go.
Okay.
But yes, you can go to ThingSpace right now and and get global pricing based on the countries that you're going to go to. And I'd be surprised if there weren't at least like 80 countries with decent roaming rules out of the 150 that it will momentarily work for you.
Yeah. And I guess the biggest use case for global SIM that can roam, it has mobility, unlike LoRa and Sigfox that don't have mobility, is for things that are outside and moving around, a car, a fleet.
Yeah, it's got a car. It absolutely has to be mobile. And, Leonard, I think this was your comment of, like you have, Rob, like, you have all these players, like almost what's the difference? It's like all startups or like all companies that are innovating on something old, they focus on the user experience. Now, again, buyers coming like, I think we're doing super cool things. Like it is so much easier today to go to a tier one telco and basically get going with connectivity than it was even a couple of years ago. Mm. And this is where these smaller companies having, you take out Once. I mean, I think they pioneer the El Cheapo, straightforward, 3 minutes if you have a debit card, like you're good to go. Like the barriers to buy global connectivity, they took them all out.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the experience goes, what was being done in the back end, I don't know, but my experience as a buyer was phenomenal. So, so as buyers, what do we want? Because, there's like, okay, easy experience. All right, these guys are going to have an advantage. But, longevity of the service you're signing up for, that might be a different discussion. Yeah. And if you want services, do you want to security credentialing, SIM authentication, or security-ish? Do you want to get in from the people that built, design, and operate the network, or from the wholesaler? Again, it's just lots of things, to consider. I still default to, I love there's a choice and I love there's competition, but they are differences.
Yeah. Well, you would hope that the fact that there's that competition, and no doubt about it, because I've talked and worked with a lot of those players, and they are easy to work with, really great user experience. Just go to the website, sign up, and it's pretty awesome. And you would hope that would drive changes in behavior of big players, the tier ones, to go, hey, these guys are kicking butt on a better user experience, up and running faster, getting people what they need without a lot of bureaucracy or red tape or whatever.
It does, Rob. And we sit there on the captain's chair of this gigantic, oil tanker, and we're looking at the speedboats, go like, and we're like, do that. And then are we turning? Are we turning?
Yeah, but you're right. I think marketing and Verizon would be looking at a lot of those players and they're like, how do we make it that easy for customers, to sign up and use Verizon Global SIMs?
Yes. And this would be a great case study for those friends of ours that sell CRM software, because if the software is smart, right, I would know right now, how many deals did I lose to Sigfox? That should be a simple there's my campaign. Yeah. Literally, there is my campaign. So let's see what comes out of this. Hashtag, tag your deals, boys.
Yeah. Well, part of me has to believe that people were tagging that a while back, and they started saying, how many deals was 3GPP in general losing to Sigfox and LoRa, which drove the creation of NB-IoT? Like, we need to have an answer to that, because NB-IoT was totally a reaction to that. It wasn't some new innovation that our friends came up with. They were like, oh crap, here's another way to do things. It's not IP based. It's totally random. It's low power. We need an answer.
Yeah, you mean I couldn't stick a 4G Cat20 modem into a water meter and expect it to last 17 years?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. Exactly.
Damn it.
And aren't we expecting the power, the longevity to be better? What is it, in release 17? Or, because right now, IoT, despite all the talk,
they have a thing called red cap.
It's nowhere even in the universe of power efficiency of LoRa. And that just comes from people who actually have deployed the actual stuff. And they're like, it's the whole NB-IoT devices lasting 10 years turned out to be total BS.
Yeah.
The LoRa stuff is legit. The NB-IoT stuff is not even close. And so, but people said, oh, well, wait for the next release of the 3GPP standard and we'll roll that out and it's going to get better. And I assume it'll get better. I just don't know how much better.
Yeah, I mean, things always get better. Yeah, it's called red cap or reduced capability IoT or something like that. I forgot exactly. But yeah, I mean, things always get better, right? And but to your point, Rob,
what Howard Jones
they say that it's the battery will last for a decade. That's like when they put your battery will last up to 10 hours on your smartphone or your tablet, So
yeah,
it usually doesn't.
It does until like the day after you're able to buy the warranty, and then it just tanks.
Right. Is this like people complaining about their older Apple iPhones and not upgrading, and all of a sudden my phone's getting slower? I think Apple's doing this to me on purpose.
Yeah, throttling.
Remember Antenna Gate?
Yeah.
Don't
Absolutely.
hold it that way.
No, you're holding it wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Steve Jobs was just trying to change the whole handset ownership culture. It's like you're supposed to hold it just in a certain way.
So speaking of Apple, have any of you or have any of your friends bought one of these new MacBook Pros with the M1 Pro or M1 Max yet?
I am
No.
no, I don't know, but I am this close. Do you get one?
I'm thinking about getting one. Yeah.
Really?
Well, go
for
south of your border and and save.
Yeah. Oh, I will definitely come to Portland and buy it there to save on sales tax. You're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a no-brainer.
That will pay for my Alaska Sabre fare to Portland and back. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's such a no-brainer. It's like 3 hours to get no sales tax. I'm totally all in with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I figure if it's as good as the M1, and we do have an M1 Mac, iMac.
Yeah. The cool new ones with all the colors and it's all flat.
Yep.
Oh man, those are good looking.
They're great.
Is that where the little man watches the garbage truck videos?
Yes, he does, and
love it.
Yeah, all the other ridiculous shows that children watch.
Maybe we're the ridiculous ones.
We are the ridiculous ones, and it's the toddlers that make all the sense in the world.
You could be right about that.
You know what? Sometimes they have better perspective than adults. Babies sometimes tell it like it is.
I know there was some quote from Pablo Picasso about how we're all born artists or whatever when we're young, but something happens and we lose it by becoming adults.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
It's called children and mortgage. And job. In making a living is the first.
Yes.
Well, I think it's a Reddit meme, but I've read the whole everyone's an artist until rent is due.
Yes.
And I cannot argue with that. I'm like, man, bills are coming. Maybe this party thing is not working out. For me.
I have to find a job, don't I?
Yeah, I have responsibility.
Bills are coming. Oh yeah. I better go get a job somewhere. Yeah.
I can't make funny noises with my twangy thing all day.
Sometimes information makes me jaded, because does that mean that there's an amazing artist doing good, whatever people will consider good art, right? Whatever that is. But that the only reason that they can be an artist is because they, there's financial security, because whatever, right? And I'm like, man, I cannot be an artist.
Some of them don't. Some of them are, I know a lot of them, amazing musicians, amazing artists. And you guys probably know them too. And, they live,
it's a sad thing.
It's a tough financial life.
And it's also sad having to sell your soul. Like, guy in office across the hall from me when I was at Microsoft, he went to Berkeley School of Music and he's a brilliant guitarist and everything. And he's working at Microsoft because he can't make a living being a musician and following his passion. And so he had to get a day job.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
I tried the modeling thing, but they didn't work out. So I've been here ever since. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Let's see that strut, man.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen. I think that's it for this week, right?
All right.
Out of coffee.
Good chat about Sigfox.
Yeah, that was awesome. A lot of fodder for Mark to react to. So
yes.
Let's see how much he agrees with everything that's been said on this episode.
According to Mark, we all are all wrong, and he's right.
We are.
And so
we've been here before. So
that's the tension.
So okay, you're the IoT Buddha, right? Rob, you're the IoT Buddha. I'm the IoT asshole, apparently.
Ooh.
What are you, David? What's your nickname?
I will embarrassingly admit that at some point I did have IoT Ninja on LinkedIn, and I regret it. Okay. So, yes. You know what?
You are IoT Ninja.
No. I don't want
Nearby W IoT Ninja.
Maybe Captain Connector. He's a mobile operator guy.
Oh man, it's too funny.
No, I don't know. I'll go with the IoT business case guy, because I've been burned more than most.
Really?
I don't know.
Yeah, business case is kind of a thing, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, like, to the public out there, you want to run it by me and learn from my experience, we'll discuss a consultancy if you're able to donate to the charity of my choice, which will be Elevator Kids. But no, seriously, I don't know. I think I will go with the Dominican IoT Guy, because there's not too many of us.
Wow, that's a good
represent my island.
I like that. I like that. And I bet you your business case wisdom would tell people that a lot of times it's not the technology that's killing your business. It's your stupid business case that wasn't thought through.
Yeah. Or in the case of, I'm not joking, again, Dominican, that is an island in the Caribbean, humid, tropics. You do have to consider the hardware you're going to deploy, because it works very different than doing, we did it in La Jolla. Surely it must work. Yeah, no. I mean, ask your friends who live by a body of salt water, have a boat, have a house, have a surf shop, and talk about salt water corrosion.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, that's why gold is valuable. It doesn't corrode.
There's an idea for a cradle point. 24 karat IBR.
There you go.
25,000.
Yeah.
Do it.
Sounds like a song.
Yeah.
That is why gold is valuable. Think about it. Art, sculptures, or whatever, things made of gold, they last forever. I mean, look at all the Egyptian stuff that's like 5,000 years old. Still,
those gold pyramids. Yeah.
And it's because it's gold. And so all those people who think that Bitcoin is digital gold, that is why gold is valuable and a Bitcoin token isn't. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Raising the corrosion topic.
So what is it again? Dominican IoT Guy? Was that what you said?
Yeah, Dominican
IoT Ninja, man.
No, I think this thing is like, and it wasn't towards me, but there was someone, like one of those LinkedIn weekend warriors, and this person undressed a ninja in such an eloquent way that I went like, holy shit, do I want to be associated with ninjas? Get rid of the ninja. It's like scarred me for life.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking though, with this new branding of yours, David, I can see that into the future, newspaper headlines, in your homeland, our favorite son, the Dominican IoT guy who rescued the Internet of Things, and he's one of us. That's powerful stuff, man. I'm expecting a parade or something.
Look, man, if I can solve for 20% of our potholes back home, there will be statues built for him.
I love it. That's great.
Okay, guys, who's going to take us out?
I used the word corrosion, so let me do it. Folks, you have made it to the end of another IoT Coffee Talk, where we discuss all things from receivership to bad business cases to the history of things and why you should learn before you embark in an IoT journey. Thank you for listening to us. Hopefully taking some nuggets of knowledge out of this 1 hour episode. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. IoTCoffeeTalk.com. It's right here. There's the link. So thank you for listening. Thank you to the Buddha. Thank you to Mr. Leonard. Thank you to myself, because Snoop Dogg thanks himself, so I might as well do the same. And we will see you next week. Stay cool, stay safe, and remember, it's spelled IoT.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.